So in this video, we are going to be talking about how the Federal Reserve is in trouble, how their monetary policy has led them into a position in which that they cannot control inflation and is going to be running rampant, and they had to switch and flip their monetary policy. At least this is kind of like what the narrative is out there. Now, I don't typically do this, but I'm kind of pushing back against another YouTuber out there, not so much against what they are saying, not so much against themselves, but what it is that they are saying, because really it's a common narrative on what it is that they are communicating out there. So again, like, I'm not saying anything negative about this particular YouTuber out there. I think that they're a great channel. They have great information. They do a wonderful job of presenting that information. They're very, very popular out there. But I left a link down in the description for you. And I didn't want to like review this video, like play the video and then review it, because I'm not sure about copyrights and stuff like that. So I just kind of like listened to the video, and really I want to talk about one particular part. Like, it's right towards the very beginning of the video. Like I said, I left a link down in the description for you guys. It's about 2 minutes into that video. And the question is asked is, why is the inflation, if the inflation is ticking up, that the Federal Reserve would still cut rates? And so this is like a very common question that you would find out there, that, you know, people would take into consideration as like, wait a minute here, if the inflationary scenario is not coming down to meet what it is that a lot of people were anticipating, meaning like the 2% target, right? If inflation isn't coming down to that 2% target, then why in the world would they adjust the rates? Like, basically, if we're having inflation ticking up, then what would be the point of cutting rates? All right? Like, you would think it would be the opposite. If inflation is ticking up, then you would want to raise rates, not cut rates. And so this is the question that a lot of people end up finding out there, and then they hyper focus in on this, like trying to understand how it is that the Federal Reserve would conduct themselves in this fashion. Like, if we have a higher inflation, then you wouldn't want to cut rates going into higher inflation. That doesn't make sense. Now, if you start incorporating the real monetary policy coming from the Federal Reserve, and you think about this question, why in the world would the Federal Reserve lower interest rates if inflation is going to be ticking up? Now, think about it. The Federal Reserve had stated this many times. I've gone over the information so many times. I left a link down in the description again to the Richmond Fed giving a working paper from, I think it was October of 2023, talking about average inflation rate over time, not the target, right? That's not what the Federal Reserve is doing. They are trying to get inflation to a 2% average inflation rate over time, flexible average inflation rate. There's no mathematical formula for figuring it out. That link that I leave down in the description coming from the Richmond Fed is the closest thing that I can find to a description of how it is that the Federal Reserve is figuring out average inflation rate over time. So now, when we have to take into consideration that the Fed is going for moderately above 2%, moderately above 2% inflation, they're not going for a 2% target. They don't tell us what moderately above 2% is. Is it 2.2? Is it 2.7? Is it 3.1? Nobody knows what moderately above 2% inflation rate is. I'm assuming we're somewhere around moderately above 2%. Complete assumption on my part, right? I couldn't tell you. But it seems like that would be appropriate if you were to say, hey, we're going to go for moderately above 2%, but don't tell you exactly where it is. Being 2.5, 2.7, 3.1 seems moderately above 2% to me. Like, just guessing. So now I think about what it is that the Federal Reserve has not only communicated out there in public, out on the mainstream media, but then also within their documents amongst each other. And that is that they are trying to get the Fed funds rate to neutral. Now, again, this is a very difficult idea to try and comprehend or put your mind around, because there is no looking at neutral. There is no website to go to say, hey, this is the neutral rate right now, right? Since there is no neutral rate to look at, it becomes very arbitrary to the idea of where the neutral rate is. There is estimates of it. Like if you go and type in Federal Reserve R* estimates, there are estimates of where this neutral rate is, but again, it's just an estimate. Now, many people feel that the neutral interest rate is rising from the estimates, from the, all the things that have been taking place within the economy lately. A lot of people feel that the neutral interest rate is rising. Now, again, this is really difficult to understand, to put your head around, but if the Federal Reserve is attempting to go for a moderately above 2% inflation rate, they have acquired it. And if they are attempting to get the Fed funds rate to neutral, and you have an elevated inflation expectation in the future, that will raise the neutral interest rate. They cut 2 more times, and the inflationary scenario that is supposedly coming will raise the neutral interest rate, so the Fed lands right at neutral. See, this is really where the Federal Reserve is attempting to conduct themselves. They're not flipping on the idea of trying to deal with an inflationary scenario that they can't control. That's what a lot of people believe. It couldn't be further from the truth. It just literally could not be any further from the truth. And as I've been trying to break this stuff down for literally years now, like years and years, since, I've probably been breaking this credible threat theory down since November of 2018, when I first read John Williams' speech, Monetary Policy for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World. Once I read that speech, once I understood that the Federal Reserve had a very horrible issue with their monetary policy and conducting themselves through the interest rate adjustments, through the Fed funds rate, once I saw that they had communicated this very clearly to the other central bankers out there, that they had screwed themselves when they hit the lower bound of 0. And again, this is very difficult for a lot of people to try and wrap their heads around, but the monetary strategy of the adjustment of interest rates is no longer an effective tool. It doesn't work. The adjusting of interest rates doesn't work, not like it used to. The communication about it has a profound impact on the economy. Huge impact. In fact, it's more important to communicate about the monetary policy than it is to conduct monetary policy. That's what's strange about it. Because now when we think about it, the Federal Reserve had cut rates 3 months ago, right? Isn't that when they first cut? Yeah, it was like 3 months ago when they first cut rates. Now, leading up to that initial rate cut, there was a massive amounts of communication that was taking place within the mainstream media, talking to the Fed officials, all the economists out there. Everybody had it in their head that the Fed was going to be moving into a stimulating economy or an easing economy or something of that nature, right? This was the belief of it. This literally drug the rates down all on their own. Before the Federal Reserve did anything, we watched mortgage rates continuously tick down until the Fed cut rates, and then it went exactly the opposite direction. So now I have to say it again. When you look at the communication and how that impacts the economy, it is profound. You can see it clearly all throughout 2024 as the communication about the cuts were coming. Mortgage rates kept ticking down, ticking down, ticking down. And then the moment that they cut, they shot up and went the other direction. So when people are anticipating, what is the Fed going to do? Are they going to cut rates going into the future? Am I going to be able to buy a house cheaper? You're looking at it wrong. This is the absolute. I know there was a time in which that would have been the correct way of looking at the Federal Reserve and their actions and the interest rate cuts and all that other stuff. That would have been an appropriate way of looking at it. But now we know that their cutting of rates or the rate adjustments is not the effective tool, but the communication about that is. And so when we see the inflationary scenario that is being pushed right now, think about all the possible tariffs and all the issues. Everybody has got this, oh man, there's going to be inflation running into the future. Now you think about that communication out there and how it is that people take this information and they say, okay, what is it that I am going to do with an idea that there's going to be an inflationary scenario coming into the future? They start conducting themselves in a way that actually creates that inflation. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you have promises of inflation coming, or the fear of inflation and the idea of inflation, tariffs, and all the other stuff that's coming from it, it will raise that inflation expectation and will raise the neutral interest rate. The Federal Reserve wouldn't need to cut that much. They were planning on cutting 4 times next year or something of that nature. I think that's what the gentleman in the YouTube video was saying, is that they were planning on cutting. I never believed any of it. Like, I didn't believe any of the stuff, right? All I believe in is what it is that is being communicated at the time and how it is that people are taking that information. Right now, people are taking in the information that we are going to have a rampant inflation coming into the future due to the fact that we have an administration who's going to create a trade war type of event with these tariffs or something of that nature. Like, that is like being communicated, and people are very fearful of this right now, and they are conducting themselves with this fear. Think about when we get there. What if it doesn't happen? Right? What if all the expectations of tariffs and inflation and all that other stuff doesn't come to fruition? Think about what it is that people are doing right now to protect themselves from that situation that may or may not come. The Fed is going to be in a position in which that they have to deal with an inflationary scenario that's coming into the future, that people are going, oh man, they can't fix it. They screwed up. They don't know what they're doing. They can't get it down to their target. They're in bad shape. They're in trouble. They don't know what they're doing. This is what you hear a lot of people. They get this anxiety that's built up within them that says, oh man, they screwed up and they're going to screw everything up. And then meanwhile, you take it back and you look at their statements about what it is that they wanted for their monetary policy. This is it. This is exactly where they wanted to be. Low unemployment, right? Although it's moving up and they're concerned about it, it's still somewhat low, historically low. Not a concern for the Federal Reserve's dual mandate. And since they were going for moderately above 2% for some time with no mathematical formula for figuring out the inflation rate, I think they've achieved that one too. So right now they're sitting right perfect within their dual mandate, even though people don't agree with it. And I totally understand that part of it because, like, nobody's ever going to agree with the Federal Reserve. I don't think that they do a great job. I don't think that they do a bad job. They just do what it is that they do. I need to figure out what it is that I need to do for myself in order to be in the best position considering what it is that's happening out there. And when you're listening to people out there who are saying that the Federal Reserve is like lost their strategy, don't know what they're doing, and then you go back and you look at their decade-long strategy, some of the things that they have communicated, how it was that they planned on deploying this strategy through the mainstream media, literally using their words, right? Like said that they were going to do that. And then now here it is taking place, and people are very much questioning what the hell's going on. And I'm thinking, it's not that difficult. I mean, it is difficult because it's not being presented out there in the mainstream media, right? There's no news article, there's no news organization, there's nobody else out there who is talking about it in the fashion that I have taken it, because I am breaking it down from the Federal Reserve's own words. Most people are looking at the Federal Reserve saying they screwed up, no point in listening to their words, they don't know what they're doing. That's how most people are taking in the information. I even had other people contact me saying, dude, you're absolutely wrong. There is other YouTubers out there who are breaking down the Fed speeches. Okay, I agree. There probably is. Are they talking about flexible average inflation rate? Are they talking about the moderately above 2% for some time? Are they talking about how it is that they develop the communication skills so that they don't have to use monetary policy through the interest rate adjustments to conduct themselves, but they can literally use their words? Are they showing how this actually happened? Are they showing the documents and presenting them down there in the description for you to go and read and judge the merits for yourself? Are they doing that? I can't find anybody else out there on the YouTube or on the mainstream media or anybody else who is so adamant about it like I am, saying don't fall for this. Do not fall for this stuff. They've wanted an inflation rate that was moderately above 2% for some time. They are achieving that goal, and people think that they screwed up, and the more that they think that they screwed up, the more successful the Federal Reserve is at it. Right? They needed people to have that inflation expectation to be elevated for them to conduct themselves. They said it many times. Go and read John Williams' speech, right? I mean, I brought it up so many times here talking about the monetary policy strategies for a low neutral interest rate world and how ironically the problem they needed to solve these days, and this is again prior to COVID, the problem they needed to solve was the risk of inflation that was persistently too low rather than too high. Now they got one that's too high. Perfect. This is what they wanted. They had a problem with it being too low. Now it's too high. That's the problem that they wanted. They wanted it too high. And so now that it's successful and they are totally conducting themselves in accordance to their strategy, nobody knows this. They don't communicate it out there onto the mainstream media. They allow people to think that they are screwed up or that they don't know what they're doing or that they can't achieve their goals. And the more that they allow people to do that, the more that they are able to conduct themselves in this manner. To be able to maintain an elevated inflation rate that's above 2%, with people actually saying, well, they're trying. They're not successful, but they're trying. They're trying to get it down to 2%. No, they're not. They're not trying to get it down to 2%. They don't want it at 2%. They want it moderately above 2%. Right? Go and look up the makeup. Like a lot of times people say, man, you're so uneducated. You don't know what you're talking about. Go and look up makeup strategy from the Federal Reserve. Go and Google it yourself. You don't have to believe me. You have to do the research for yourself because nobody else is going to tell you. Right? So you go and Google makeup strategies from the Federal Reserve. Go and look up flexible average inflation targeting. Right? Go and look that stuff up. Go and look up the neutral interest rate and how it is that they are trying to attempt to get themselves to the neutral and all that. When you start piecing all this stuff together, all of this starts making a hell of a lot more sense. It's when you think that they screwed up or that they don't know what they're doing, or you're listening to the mainstream. If you're listening to the mainstream media for the Fed strategy, you will be screwed up. It will definitely screw your mind up. There is no doubt about it. Absolutely no doubt about it. They absolutely use the mainstream media to push the credible threat. They do not. Like, if you want to know what the true strategy is, it will never be communicated out there in an article, like in a news article. It will not be communicated out there in a press conference. I mean, it does. I shouldn't say that it does, but it's so confusing in the words that they use, and then they don't really cover it very well. Like we pinpointed it out, like we brought it up and we pinpointed it and found where the congressman asked the right question, but then the way that it was received, like the way that it was communicated, the answer was communicated back, a lot of times the way that it is taken is even in itself is misunderstood, right? Like a lot of times just hearing the Federal Reserve say our 2% goal, a lot of times the people immediately replace goal with target. Or you'll hear them say, well, the Federal Reserve's target. But they don't have a target. They have a 2% average inflation rate over time. Flexible average inflation rate over time. FAIT, F-A-I-T. And so when you hear that and you're thinking, okay, well, they're trying to get to the target. They're trying to get to this goal. They're trying to get to this 2%. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, you're right. They are trying to get to 2% over time. Flexible average inflation targeting, meaning at appropriate monetary policy would likely seem to achieve a 2% inflation rate or moderately above 2% to make up for the fact that they failed to achieve a 2% during the previous 10 years. Like once you have internalized this and you like really look at it for this fashion, and it says, okay, yes, the Federal Reserve kept interest rates too low for too long to create an inflationary scenario that had inflation running extra hot, extra long for an extended period of time to make up for the fact that they were not able to achieve the 2% target for the previous 10 years. This makeup strategy is being deployed right now and nobody sees it. I swear I am the only one. And I don't know why. I mean, I know other people have communicated the makeup strategy. Other people have communicated flexible average inflation targeting. Other people have mentioned this stuff, but nobody seems to have taken it into a consideration that they are not going to deviate from that strategy. Most people think that they're flying off the seat of their pants. And since nobody wants to just hold on and maintain that position of saying, no, man, through all this stuff that they are doing, all this crazy media attention to them flipping their direction and not cutting as much and even possibly going up and all that other stuff. It's information being deployed to get you to conduct yourself in a particular fashion, because that's the credible threat. It works. It works so well right now. And I don't know how to communicate it out there other than just being persistent about it. I'm going to come out here every single day. I'm going to show the evidence of it. I'm going to constantly be bringing up how it is that people are misunderstanding it, how that misunderstanding is a benefit to the Fed itself. Every time you think that the Federal Reserve is losing it and that inflation is going to be running rampant going into the future, that is a benefit to the Federal Reserve. And most people don't see it that way. They look at the inflationary scenario and they get mad at the Federal Reserve saying, oh, this inflation is too painful for me, not realizing that that exact feeling and energy that they are holding within themselves is a benefit to the Federal Reserve. That is how the Federal Reserve is able to conduct themselves, is by you having that feeling and understanding of inflation that is going to be destroying you. If you have that, they are winning. And that's what's sad about this whole thing. Most people feel this way, and they say, man, somebody needs to step up and do something about the Federal Reserve and this misbehavior or something. I don't know how to quite do it. And then really, to understand the Federal Reserve is to understand that they want you to have an inflation expectation that is elevated. They want you to feel pain and misery. By you feeling that pain and misery, that is a benefit to their existence, how it is that they are able to continue to conduct themselves. And it's so sad to see it out there. And I'm trying my best, right, to show this to people out there so that they can do what it is that is most appropriate for themselves. And since most people want to look at it saying, man, no, you're wrong, the Fed causes this pain and we need to do something about it. And I'm thinking, yeah, that feeling right there is the reason why they are successful at what it is that they are doing. If people were to take in the consideration that I have about the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy and how it is that they are doing it right now, if everybody was to understand it to the level that I have been trying to show, to constantly inform the people. We have a few thousand people here who get it, but if we had hundreds of thousands, a million of people who understood the Fed to the level that we are discussing right here, right now, they would not be able to be in existence. It would end the Fed. This is how you end the Fed. This whole idea that people are trying to fight the Fed and say that they screwed up and they don't know what they're doing, whatever, that's benefiting the Fed. That is actually giving them the power that they need in order to conduct themselves. If we understood it for the level that I have tried to show, that they are using their words, not their actions, to conduct themselves, and it works so well. And if people were to internalize this information the way that I have tried to present it out there, they would fail. It wouldn't work. They would not be able to conduct themselves any further, and they would go and they would have to have a whole other way of doing things. It wouldn't be like this. And so again, like, if you want to truly end the Federal Reserve, you have to understand their monetary policy. You have to understand that they were trying to create an inflationary scenario that was persistently too high. They are doing it. They are doing it right now. And the more that they do it, and the more that people feel that they failed, the more successful they are at doing it. And it's sad to see it. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. All right, we're just going to give it a few more minutes here, and then we're going to call it good. Like and share. Yes, please do, guys. Liking the video, commenting. This is how you support the Uneducated Economist. You don't have to send me, money. You don't have to do all that other stuff. It's great. I love the support. I really appreciate every single time somebody sends me a PayPal donation or Venmo or buys the Cantillon essay. But ultimately, the best way to support the Uneducated Economist is by being here, commenting, liking the video, sharing the video, getting this information out. That's how we do it. Once we get this information out and people are recognizing it for what it really is, so that they can actually start diving into this information and breaking it down. I'm just some dude sitting in a car trying to share this information with you. If we had people who are more, what am I trying to say, who are more involved in that of the financial industries out there, if they were to take consideration of the information that I am presenting right now, I really honestly feel that the Federal Reserve would not be able to conduct themselves like this anymore. All right. But again, like if nobody's following it and everybody thinks that they screwed up, and that actual belief is what's benefiting the Fed, and that's the 99% of the people out there, I don't know what it is that we can do. I really don't. Because understanding how it is that they are doing this, how they're using the communication styles, how they developed this over the last, 10, 15 years in order to conduct themselves in this fashion, building this up over the last few years and nobody recognizing it or seeing it, I don't know how it is that we're going to end the Fed if people just don't want to believe it. Yeah. All right. A few more minutes. Any questions, comments, anything we want to say here? We got Tom, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Great book. Yep, I've met Geo Griffin. Actually, I got to spend quite a bit of time with him. He's a great dude. All right, which means more inflation, hence why the Fed lowers interest rates. Okay. It's just math. If you can follow the numbers, the con is pretty obvious. Maybe. All right. You better not shout. You better not cry. Santa is coming to town. All right. Brody, I really do enjoy different views. All right. I had an ounce of gold for every ounce of weed I have bought. I would be a wealthy man. Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Jeff. All right. William, we are going to spend so much. Homes and stocks will keep rising. All right. Walrus, Flying High Again. It's a great Aussie song. Yeah, I love it. All right. Where are CD interest rates going? All right. You have cliff notes for today's argument. I don't have any cliff notes in front of me, but I left some links down in the description for you guys. All right. Merry Eve of Christmas Eve. All right. Thanks, All Nighter. Lumberjack Landlord, great to see you up in here. Merry Christmas, Simon. Well, Merry Christmas to you too, Matthew. I saw the inflation, bought another house, and continued to watch my Fidelity account skyrocket to the moon. Might end up with a free house by the end of it. All right. William Carl has it right. Brave Bulwark, silver and gold. Happy holidays. Brody says, Simon, do you think there's legitimately some way that people could position themselves to fight the Fed and win? Well, I mean, what does it mean to win? I mean, I'm not sure what that means to win. Like right now, is winning being in a position in which that you can pay your bills? Is that winning, or is there something else out there that describes winning? Because I'm not sure what that would mean. Like, is there a way for them to fight the Fed so that they win? No. The only thing that you can really do is understand what it is that's going on out there so that you can position yourself most appropriately for it. Now, if you're taking on a theory or an idea or a belief that the Federal Reserve doesn't know what they're doing, that they screwed up, that they failed, that they're all that stuff, then ultimately you can't listen to anything that they say. Right? You can't take into consideration the credible threats. You can't take into consideration of the interest rate adjustments. You can't take in any of that consideration because they're screwed up and they failed. They don't know what they're doing. Right? Now, me on the other hand, I look at some of the comments that people are saying about how they screwed and failed up and don't know what they're doing, and to me, that is a misguided misunderstanding of the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy strategies. Because as far as I can tell from everything that they have said from years ago, literally 10, 20 years ago, it seems that they are right in line with what it is that they wanted. They wanted low unemployment and inflation moderately above 2%. Now, granted, there's a lot of people out there who will give descriptions on how painful and incorrect and wrong and all that other stuff. And I totally agree with most of that information that people are putting out there. The only difference is that I don't find it to be painful to me because I didn't position myself in a way that says, yeah, what they are doing is creating pain and misery for me. I don't see it that way. Right? I just don't see it that way. And so as other people want to give it that meaning, I don't. Right? I just I don't need to fight them. They can go, they can fight. Every people can fight. I don't know what you're fighting. I don't know what's the fight. What do you like? The only way to fight them is to understand it to the level that I am. I am fighting them. All right. This is how you fight them: is you understand their monetary policy for what it really is, recognize that they wanted inflation moderately above 2%, that this was their intentions, that they didn't screw up, they're not in trouble. All right. And by understanding this, it was just like, yeah, this is where the Fed wanted to be. Right? And then, so, I mean, we may not agree with that. We may say, no, they need to be in a different position, but we can wish and hope and dream and pray all day long. It doesn't matter. Right? Like, what we want may not be appropriate for what that dude wants. Right? And so it's not up for us to decide what it is that we think that they should be doing that's appropriate for us. They're going to do what they do. They've said what they are going to do. They've said what their goals, their intentions, their ideas, their policies, they've communicated that out there. It's up for us to take that information and then say, okay, I'm going to do the best opportunity I can do for myself with this information. And when I look at the information that I have gathered and I look at the mainstream media's information, I'm like, boy, don't follow that. Don't follow that mainstream media narrative about the Fed's strategy. It's complete garbage. It's BS. It's not right. It's not right at all. And even most people who communicated about the Federal Reserve strategy don't have it right because they're getting that information directly from the mainstream media, which again is being used as propagandized information for them to conduct themselves with their monetary policy. Once you recognize it, once you see it for what it is, once you recognize it in this fashion, and then realize that the information that most people gather is directly from these news sources, and that's the reason why it's a mass delusion, mass psyops. I don't even know how to quite describe it, but essentially everybody's regurgitating the same information to each other, but it's not the right stuff. Right? I saw this take place during the lumber, like when lumber was running up to its all-time high. What time is it? I got to get going here, guys. But I saw something very similar take place when the lumber was running up to its all-time high. I was reading Wall Street Journal articles. I was reading USA Today. I was reading all kinds of stuff, watching YouTubers who had hundreds of thousands of views, even millions of views, giving their lumber information out, and every bit of it was wrong. Every bit of it. And I'm thinking, man, 100,000 people watch this video. They are now informed incorrectly, right? When it came to the lumber, the lumber story. And so I thought to myself, I knew it then. I was just like, okay, mainstream media is by far the worst place in the world that you could ever go to get information. Now, you can find information there, but if you don't go and do the research yourself, go and break down those documents yourself, to go read through those working papers, you're not going to get the right information. It's going to be propagandized, it's going to be politicized, it's going to be pushing you in a direction, a feeling, a belief that will most likely be inaccurate. And I see it every single day. I see it all the time. I saw it big time in lumber, and that's what really clued me into, hey, the mainstream media is just, it's absolute garbage. And so when I started doing my own research, or I wasn't starting, I had just really dove into the research of it and started finding this narrative that is so different when it's coming to the mainstream media, that narrative is so different from what it is that they communicate within themselves, to themselves. And that's why I'm just like, why is this? I don't understand. I mean, other people out there have access to this information, the same information that I have been providing. Right? It's not like it was one speech somewhere one time where they said, hey, we're going to shoot for moderately above 2%. No. It came from the long run economic projections and strategies. It came from Jerome Powell's speech given August 27th of 2020. It's in Michelle Bowman's speech that she gave just, 6 months ago, in the link that I leave down in the description, coming from the Richmond Fed, talking about the average inflation rate. They talk about how it is that the Federal Reserve is not going for a 2% target, but going for 2% average inflation rate over time with no mathematical formula for figuring it out. I mean, that's what the whole thing is right now that's going on is that secrecy. And it's not even secret. It's just not communicated properly. It's being gaslit. People just assume that the Fed is going for this 2% target, and since they don't clarify it, they don't clearly express that they are going for moderately above 2%. They just refer to it as their inflation goal. Nobody knows what they're really doing. And that's why most people think that they screwed up. I don't know how else to tell it. But I'm going to keep coming out here and I'm going to keep telling this story. I'm not going to let it go. If I'm the only one and I feel like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat while doing this, I don't care. Right? Because everything else out there is wrong. I know this is right. I know this is right because I can see it taking place right now. As everybody else is thinking, oh man, they screwed up. They don't know what they're doing. And I'm thinking, no, this is exactly what they said that they were going to do. Because you don't know that I guess it's not your fault, but because you don't know that, then you probably don't realize that they are landing right in line with what it is that they were attempting to do. This isn't a screw up. This isn't in trouble. All right? Now, they're not going to tell you, hey, man, we're doing it. We're like, yay, we're awesome, but they're in the background. They're giving high fives. They absolutely wanted this to be exactly where it is today. Low unemployment, right? Or somewhat low, historically low unemployment, and inflation moderately above 2%. Very much is what the Federal Reserve was looking for, and they got it. Alrighty, guys, this was a lot of fun. Just kind of hearing me rant. There was so many comments in here. Keep hitting that like button. We got a few more minutes here. I'm going to give you like 2 more minutes. Go hit that like button. We got almost 500 people watching right now, 493, 163 likes. Go hit that like button. The video will get uploaded. The YouTube algorithm will pick it up, spread it around. More people will join in. We can keep this conversation going because, again, you're not going to get it anywhere else. Everybody else is going to tell you something different. And then they take that idea that they have and they start running with it for their strategies, the investments, the business that they do, all the savings, whatever, right? They're running with that idea, but they are missing the fact that the Fed wanted this. They wanted inflation moderately above 2%. They want to achieve a neutral interest rate. Whether they bring Fed funds rate down to neutral or neutral finds them, they want to be at neutral. And with an elevated inflation expectation coming into the future, it will raise the neutral interest rate. The Fed may not have to cut as much going into the future because of that. That's the reason. Not all the rest of the stuff. All the other people out there who are, screaming all this other craziness, they miss it. They do not get it right. That's why the Federal Reserve is backing off on the cuts. It's because of that exact reason. Neutral interest rate may find the Federal Reserve. The Fed doesn't necessarily have to find neutral, especially if that inflation expectation is running rampant into the future. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. There's some links down in the description for you guys. We're going to keep breaking this stuff down. I don't know how else to do it other than just keep coming out here and showing evidence of it. And again, I don't mean to push back against any of the other YouTubers out there and the information that they have. I think they got great information. I think that they study very hard. They know the economy very well. But a lot of times when it comes to, understanding what it is that's happening, if you're not already aware of the strategy itself, it leaves you to assume. And that assumption can be very dangerous. All right. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know. Let's see. All night or try those links, Jeff. Yeah. All righty, guys. Have a Merry Christmas.